Let's give people a chance to come on.
Very slowly,
should just start. Sweet.
Okay. Kaiser, how's the...
Should we start? Okay. Welcome and thank you for joining our pirkei shiur in honor of my dad and sister, Eloi Nishmat Harab Abraham Chaim ben Eliezer Yaakov, Zecher Tzadik Libracha, and Goldie Miriam ben Abraham Chaim Zechrona Libracha. May they intercede on high on behalf of all of us. Over to you, Dov.
Thanks, Chai. Welcome back. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Friends of my dad, my Havdil, friends of my mom. Good to be with you all. To learn a Mishnah, Ilu Nishmas, our father, the Tzadik Livrocha, and the Yeshiva Al Kibro continues to study his Torah. Let's learn Mishnah, pirkei, Mishnah Hey or Mishnah Vav, depends on the text. Hu Haya Omer. This is a Mishnah of Hillel. Hillel, the Nasi. Hillel who led the generation. Hillel who was the paradigm of Torah for his generation and for all generations. Torah and the Torah of Midas. He taught a host of things. In this Mishnah, 6 things. Let's see what they are. Hu Haya Omer. This was the great Hillel, the one who slept on top of the Beis Midrash. These were his mottos. He says, "In bur yerei chet." He started at the bottom. A person who is a boer, not a boer in Afrikaans, a boer in English. A boer in Afrikaans, I think, is a farmer. A boer, double O, is not a farmer. He's a boer. He's like a boer, an empty pit. A boer, it's like in Hebrew. A boer is someone who is totally uncultivated, underdeveloped completely. So Hillel starts with that. In boer yerei chet. You can't expect a boer to be a tzaddik, to be a yerei chet. Not only can't he be pious, he can't even be tzaddik. He can't be righteous. Next level, v'lo am ha'aretz chosid. And am ha'aretz, on the other hand, the second level, unschooled, unlettered, unlearned, and am ha'aretz. He can be a tzaddik, he can be a yerei chet, but he can't be a chosid. We'll have to examine these two. The third one, which we will try and get to tonight, v'lo habaishan lamed. The person who is bashful cannot be a lamdan. He can't learn. Bashfulness is a wonderful trait, beautiful trait, a positive quality, but it has limits. So that's the third level. Now he can't be a chacham. First one can't be tzaddik. The second one can be a tzaddik, but he can't be a chosid. You need to examine what's the difference. The third one can be a chosid, but he can't be a lamdan. He can't be a lomed. He can't be a learner. And then v'lo hakabdan milamed. The fourth one can be a lamed even. He can be a London. But he can't be a milamed. He can't be a rebbe. He can't teach children. Why? Because he's a captain. So these are the grades of Hillel, the gradings. Incredible. Bur, Amoretz, a Baishan, special, and then a captain. And those are the first four of the clauses that Hillel taught in our Mishnah. Let's start from the beginning. There's a Bur and there's an Amoretz. There's two ways of being ignorant in Torah. One of them is to be an Amoretz. We know what that is. Then there's another one to be a Bur. Somehow the Bur is the lowest. The Bur is lower than the Amoretz. What's the difference between them? The Rabbeinu Yonah, the Meforshim explain as follows: a Bur is totally uncultivated, like a field that hasn't been plowed. Nothing can grow properly. Nothing true and proper can grow in such a field. It's uncultivated. It will just come out wild. Whereas an Amoretz, on the other hand, he's not that bad. He's unlearned. Somehow he's not a Bur. What's the difference between the Amoretz and the Bur? So the Rav and Rabbeinu Yonah explained as follows. A Bur is somebody who doesn't have dealings with people enough. He's not familiar with normal social interaction. He's a man of the field somewhere, out there. He's a hunter. He's on his own. He's used to doing things on his own. Sleeps when he wants, eats when he wants, shoots when he wants. He's a lone wolf, lone hunter. That's a Bur, totally uncultivated. And Amoretz, on the other hand, he never went to yeshiva. He never got a proper education. He hasn't learned very much. But he's me'urav im habrius. He's used to dealing with people. He runs a shop. He runs a business. He has learned to smile at the customer. He has learned an accountability that comes with natural discourse between people, which is an incredible lesson. Hillel is saying that there's a whole element of Torah that you don't, before you get to the books, just being a normal, accountable, socially accountable human being, by having to talk with people, rub shoulders with them, deal with issues, apologize, greet them. The difference between a Bur and an Amoretz. Two different worlds. Just like the Chacham and Amoretz are different worlds, the Amoretz and the Bur are different worlds. And it all comes down to the fact that he's used to this level of accountability with people. Amazing. The Torah refers to Yaakov as the Ish Tam Yoshev Ohalim, the man who dwelled in the tents. And his brother Esav, as you remember, he was the Ish Sayid, Ish Sadeh. He was a man of the field, man of the hunt. What does it mean? He was not the man of the tent. He was the man who couldn't bear being in the tent. Why? It's not because he didn't enjoy learning. It's not because he wasn't smart. He was brilliant. He couldn't handle being in the tent because there are too many people there. You're always rubbing shoulders with them. There's always friction. You always have to finesse them. You always have to greet them and thank them and say sorry and be accountable. He couldn't handle that. He headed for the fields. Many people found the only place of solace is out there in the wilds where there's nobody with any expectations of him. The Amoretz, he's comfortable. He's not yet in London, but he's comfortable dealing with people. And what's the big difference between those two attitudes to life? The Bur is so uncultivated, he's so unaccountable, he's so unused to being accountable, he can't possibly eat mitzvahs in any defined way. There's no shulchan aruch for him. He's not used to accountability. The Amoritz, who's used to dealing with hundreds of people, with many people, he can deal with Hashem. He's used to the trade. I do this, you do that. He's used to that accountability of relations. He has the basic level of knowing how to relate with people, accountability. And therefore, he can be a tzaddik. So Mishnah says, Hillel, remember, he's nurturing and designing a society for great morality. And it's coming through Torah. That's the thrust of the whole of Pirkei Avos. So Hillel's leadership is defined by this. First of all, don't be a boor. That's the first level. A society that educates against boorism. The Kotzker Rebbe said as follows: Ein boor yirei chet. A boor can never be a yirei chet. Why is that? Because if he was a yirei chet, if he had a fear of sin, he was a tzaddik, he couldn't stand being a boor, because that's the biggest chet in the world. The biggest chet in the world is to allow oneself to be totally uncultivated, totally uncouth, and totally unaccountable to anyone. Do what I want when I want. He can't be a yirei chet, because the yirei chet could never stand for the kotzke being that uncultivated. It's the biggest crime, it's the biggest chet in the world, is to remain that, to allow all one's latent potential to go untouched, untapped, undeveloped. And therefore, that's the embur. The first element of education, says Hillel, is don't be a bur. The second one is don't be an Amoritz. Interesting, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was the Posek Hador of our generation, brother-in-law of Rabbi Yashiv. Really one of the outstanding spokesman for Halacha and the Rosh Yeshiva to boot. He raised a family of giants in Torah, all of them. Each of his sons became a wonderful posek and a gaon in Torah. And one of his sons, after he was nifta, was talking about the father. He says, the father never put a pressure on them, you must be a Talmid Chacham. So that's just, he got a little bit Torah. He says that pressure was too much for the children, and the father never used it. His challenge to the children, his message to his sons was never, you must be outstanding, you must be brilliant. He raised them on the basis of our Mishnah. Please don't be an Amoritz. No Amoratzim. That's all. Just couldn't bear a family of Amoratzim. Amazing. And they had the space and they understood the message. And then he planted the seeds occasionally that you're capable of more. But the message was just not to be unlettered, unlearned, but already learned. An Amoritz is already a level. It's a person who's at least capable of relationships. But what does Hillel say about such a person? Amoritz is capable of being a tzaddik. He can be righteous, but he can't be a chassid. He can't be pious. What's the difference between a tzaddik, a yirei, someone who does the right thing, and a chassid? Why can Amoritz be the one, tzaddik, yirei, the other? He can't be a chassid. What's a chassid? Chassid, says the Ramchal, Mesilas Yesharim is based on Chassidus. Chassidus is not about self-flagellation, what many people thought it was about. And fasting many hundreds of fasts, and toiveling in the ass on the snow. He says that's not real Chassidus. Real Chassidus is hamischased in koinoi. Someone who comes from the word chesed, is kind. He goes beyond the letter of the law. He's not just righteous. He's not just a tzaddik, not just a yirei chet. He's gomel chesed. He wants to go beyond. In other words, in any relationship, he says, I don't just want to do what's expected of me. I want to give a little bit more. He's a giving person. And that expresses itself also in relation to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's a mischased in koinah. That's a real chassid. Chassidus, not just piety. Giving. Hashem says, give tzedakah. He says, Hashem, I can afford to give a little more than Maaseh. I'm going to give more. How much can I give? Hashem says, learn Torah, at least a minimum. He says, Hashem, if that's what you like, I'd like to achieve something great in that. And so on in every mitzvah. He takes each mitzvah not as a directive, but as a direction. And he wants to give. He says, well, let me do a little more. That's a chassid. Now, we said that a bur has no relationship at all. He's out there in the field, he's in the farm, but in the jungle. He's on the hunt on his own. The Amoritz is at least in the shop. He's dealing with people all the time. He knows how to relate, but he's not yet a person of relationships. A higher level is the person of learning when he studies Torah, when he thinks about Torah, when he learns more about Hashem. He understands more about Hashem. He's in a real relationship with Hashem. It's now not just accountability, it's wanting to do more. But somehow learning is not just there so that you know what's the law, so that you know what you have to produce. Learning, says Hillel, is going to take you from being an Amoritz to being a chassid, a person who's capable of understanding what Hashem really wants in each mitzvah and providing that. It's a different level of refinement of relationship, a deepened relationship. That's what a chassid is. We understand. A bur can't even be a yerei chet, because even the mitzvahs that he picked up, wild, uncultivated. An Amoritz can be a tzaddik, it can be a chassid. A chassid, through learning, you come to know Hashem. Knowing Hashem, you understand the relationship, you understand what he wants. The directive becomes a direction. An Amoritz is not used to that. He's used to the world. Here's the Meiri, the world of business, accountability, strict accountability. I gave you 20 Rand, I expect 20 Rand's worth of merchandise. That's the only level he knows the Amoritz. Only when he, a different level of relationship, through thinking, through understanding, through knowing someone, develop a true relationship, then you go beyond. You become a chassid of it. And obviously that's the key to all our relationships. Relationships at home need to mirror a relationship with Hashem. They shouldn't just be factory floor relationships. They should be always looking to give a little more. That's the hallmark of a chesed, of a chassid, the person who wants to do a little more. Let's move on. Below habaishan lamed. The person who's a baishan, the next level, the third level, the person who is abashed, cannot be a learner. Can't be bashful, as good as it is to be bashful, not to be brazen. That's the opposite of brazenness, is bashfulness. He holds himself to a level of behavior, and therefore is embarrassed to let himself down. That's a baishan. It's not someone who's shy, because shy means he doesn't feel he has what to say. A baishan is not shy. Baishan is someone who knows he has plenty to say. He holds himself to a high level. He's not prepared to embarrass himself, to let himself down. It's usually a positive, but not if it comes at the expense of learning. Lo habaishan lamed. Hillel said the next tier, the next level, the next mile, next stage of the development in society is we want lomdim. We want people who are lamdonim, who truly understand Torah. They understand Hashem, and therefore capable of a deep relationship where they can give much more. They can be mischased in koino. There's a wonderful story told about by Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, who once went to visit his uncle, Reb Avram Yoshin, the Rosh Yeshiva of Novadik in Bialystok. Novadik Yeshiva was very famous for its brand, its particular brand of learning and of Musar. And he was there visiting his uncle. Reb Chaim was a genius. He later became the Rosh Yeshiva of the Mir. And in the yeshiva, he was picking his uncle's brains. So he said to his uncle, Reb Avram, he said to him, tell me, who is the lamdan of the yeshiva? Of all the Talmudim, which is the biggest lamdan? So Reb Avram Yoshin, his uncle, pointed out one way. He said, that is the lamdan of the yeshiva. After a while, he said, tell me, which of the Bochrim is the biggest Boki in Yeshiva? Who knows the most? Which one knows the most? Lamdan is the deepest thinker, the clearest thinker. Which one knows the most? He pointed another Bocher, because often the two don't go together. Someone who's superficial, amasses information with clarity, but not with a Lamdan sometimes doesn't remember all the cross references, but what he has is ma'amik, is well defined, is well articulated. The Chaim said, aha, and tell me, the third great Maila, Madrega in the Yeshiva man, and which is the biggest Musar personality of the Yeshiva? Who would you say is the biggest Bal Musar? Which one understands the ethics of Musar, character refinement? And the uncle of the Rosh Yeshiva pointed out the third student. The Chaim Stuchina, as my father used to call him, that was the place he came from, the town Stuchin. Chaim Stuchina then turned to his uncle, Avram, and said to me, tell me now, of all of them, who is the best Bucha? All the yeshivas in Europe it was, and probably again today, who is the best Bucha in the yeshiva? Who's the top? And to his great surprise, his uncle pointed out the fourth Bucha. His uncle, what do you mean? This one's a deeper thinker than him, a bigger lamdan. This one's a bigger Bucky, he knows more than him, and this one's a bigger Musa, he understands ethics better than him. How can you say that he's the best Bach? The Rosh Yeshiva of Nevada, Rebbe Avram Yochanan, said to him, aha, you're right. He's not the cleverest, he doesn't know the most, he's not even the deepest Musa personality in the Yeshiva, but he's the biggest Mavakish. There's nothing that will stop his thirst for learning. This man, he didn't have the background, he didn't have the skills, he didn't have the natural latent talent that the others had, but a thirst and a drive that makes this man the best Bocher in the yeshiva. Of course, that man became later on the Stipler Gaon, the father of the Godel of our generation, of Chaim, brother-in-law of the Chazon Ish. The Stipler Gaon of Yisrael Yaakov Kanievsky grew up in the Bialystok branch of the Nevada Yeshiva. He wasn't the biggest Lamdan, he wasn't the biggest Boki, but he was the biggest Mavakesh. And that's Hillel's next course, and we're going to pause over here with this thought. This thought is that in Boyer Echet, and Amaritza, bashfulness is a wonderful trait, but even better is learning. If your bashfulness is standing in the way of your determination to learn, your thirst to learn, it's overpowering your thirst to learn, then it's no good. Because the first rule of learning is as well. I just want to complete this thought. The first rule of learning is you have to enjoy being a beginner. Beginning again every day when you're learning, you're a beginner again, you're an Amaretz again. You need to enjoy that feeling of not knowing and the surprise and the pleasure of knowing. And it's something I saw by my father many, many times. He never claimed to know everything. He was always delighted to learn something new. He even used this expression quite a number of times. It's funny. You would have thought at this age I would have known such an important piece of information. How did I not know? But he relished it. Every time he clarified another point, because it's endless, it's bottomless. No one can ever know everything. We're always going to surprise ourselves by things that we didn't know. But by Dad, it was a pleasure. He never pretended from the start to have known it all. And that's what a learner is. In order to develop the next stage of relationship to Hashem, a deeper relationship, a person has to be a thinker and a learner, and he has to place that, the joy of learning new things, asking the questions. Don't be scared, don't be a patient. Don't be scared to ask, don't be scared not to know. Don't kid yourself, I know everything. You become so scared you can't learn. So that's the next tier of our relationship with Hashem is through the learning, through the not being a Baishan. Lo Baishan, Lamed, a person can move on to the next level. Zat Hashem, to be continued next time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dov. That was outstanding. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Guy. Thank you.
Have a good night.